For the first time in 21 years, I'm going to be listening to brand new Stabbing Westward. This is their album from earlier this year called Chasing Ghosts. Hello everybody and welcome back to another album review / reaction here on my channel. I'm actually really excited about this because I had no clue that Stabbing Westward had a new album come out earlier this year, back in March actually. We're in September now, so I had no clue. I've been totally in the dark about this, and a few days ago, one of my friends that I talk to a couple times a year, we always mention different things about music and kind of recommend things to each other. He brought this up, and I was like, what? There's a new Stabbing Westward? My mind was blown. And so I'm really excited to get to that. Really excited about that. I have all my Stabbing Westward albums here, and I'll talk about that, get to all that stuff in a second. But first, I just want to say that if you're not familiar with what I'm do on my channel here, know that basically what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about Stabbing Westward and my feelings about them before I get to the album. Then I will listen all the way through the entire album, giving my thoughts, talking over the music as I'm listening to it. And then after I'm done listening to the whole album, I'll give my sort of review or just my overall thoughts. And then that'll pretty much be it. I did actually record a few bonus things for this episode, for this reaction actually, that I'll put at the very end of this video. And that was me taking my records that I put up here, taking them off the wall, the ones that I had up there, and replacing them with all these cool sort of like Halloween-y, more fall-themed ones. So if you want to see more about these records that I have up here on the wall, the ones I had up there before, and then see me changing them, talking about them a little bit, I'll put all that at the end of this video. So that'll be something a little bonus. But I have to mention that the last video, the last album that I recorded the reaction for and uploaded to YouTube was my Muse one, and it was something that I was so excited about, and I was really excited about the video because I loved the album so much. Anyway, I'm going too long into all this. All I'm saying is my Muse video, unfortunately, was copyright claimed and blocked in all countries, so I had to go back, re-render the video down with no music in it at all. So I'm really, really, really hoping that's not the case for this Stabbing Westward album, but I don't know. I do know they're signed to a record label. I think it's a smaller record label. I was just reading on their Wikipedia page a little bit about them, and getting ready for this album. So I'm really hoping, fingers, toes, everything crossed, that I can include the audio from this album we're going to listen to, from Chasing Ghosts, in this video. If not, I sincerely apologize. I'll have messages and stuff up. Regardless, I will include in the description of this video links to listen on Spotify, to purchase the album maybe through Amazon or wherever. Maybe a link to their website. If I can find like a link that has like a link like tree or whatever to all the different like Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, Last FM, whatever all the other ones are, I don't even know. I'll try to include all that stuff, but hopefully I'll be able to include the audio from Chasing Ghosts in this video so you will hear what I'm hearing. Another thing in the description of the video will be timestamps, because I have a tendency to go on and tangents and all this stuff. So I will include timestamps for all the different sections of the video, including each of the individual songs. So if you have a favorite song on this album and you want to hear my thoughts about it, just that song, you can feel free to skip to that track. And if you want to skip everything and go right to the very end of the video to just see what I thought of it overall, just head to this section that's called Album Review, or Album Overview, whatever I decide to label it as. And that'll be the last, sort of one of the last sections of the video. Like I mentioned, there will also be sort of a different bonus section about the records on the wall at the very end. So check out whatever you want, no big deal. One other thing I have to mention is that I was trying to set up everything for Halloween a little bit, like I mentioned, all the records on the wall. But I also decided to take down my regular Harry Potter poster that I have on the wall here. And I put up the picture that poster I've actually had on the wall for many years before I started this channel and put the Harry Potter one up there. This is The Mansion in Winter, which is a short story that a friend of mine wrote that I actually recorded and did all the sound effects and some little bit of music for to actually release as sort of like a tiny audiobook. It's a short story, so I think the whole thing was around 20 minutes long. But I actually underscored the entire thing with sound effects and a little bit of music and some different things. So if you want to, check out The Mansion in Winter. It is on YouTube in its entirety. You can listen to the entire thing. I think you can find it by just looking up The Mansion in Winter, but you may want to type in R.J. Bell. Randy Bell is the name of the guy that wrote it. co-wrote it along with Gabriel Burkham, and then you can see my name down here on the bottom. So that's really cool. But this poster is really cool, kind of a creepy horror vibe to it, so I thought that worked for this. And then I just have to shout out, the reason I'm mentioning any of this at all is because normally I have a different chair. I'm trying something completely different. Normally I have a black table in front of me, but I got this thing, which is actually a tabletop sitting on top of another table. That was dangerous that I just did that. But I have to mention this guy right here, because if you can't tell because it's too dark or whatever you're watching on, this is my Crow action figure that I actually purchased at Goodwill a couple years ago for $2. It was $1.99 for this. It's actually a really rare, very cool, very detailed the Crow action figure. And so I was just walking around looking for Halloween-y things to put up, like this piece of wood, this Frankenstein piece of wood that I got here. And I found him, and I was like, oh, I'll put him up. And I tried to get him to stand on this table for like 5 minutes. And finally I was just like, ugh, and I bashed him down. And right now you can't see, but his back foot here, his back foot is actually hanging off of this table. So if he manages to stay there, it will be a miracle. But whatever, that's enough about all that. Although I do think I was trying to debate. Someone let me know in the comments. I can check after this, but I have it upstairs. And I don't want to move all this stuff to get out of here. But I think Stabbing Westward may have been actually on the Crow soundtrack. I know they were on a lot of soundtracks back in the day for different things. And I don't think they were ever in the soundtrack for video games, because for me, a lot of the music that I discovered early on was the soundtrack for games like Twisted Metal, Vigilante 8, different video games that used like levels, and each level, Tony Hawk, each level had like a soundtrack or a specific song for that level. But I also loved lots of movie soundtracks and all these different various artist compilations and things. And I think that's probably how I discovered Stabbing Westward. I'm sure the first song I ever heard from them was "What Do I Have to Do," which is one of their biggest songs, if not their biggest song actually to date. Not quite sure if "Save Me" was bigger than that. I'm pretty sure "What Do I Have to Do" was their biggest song, but I remember very clearly enjoying, like, hearing "What Do I Have to Do" on the radio a few times. I'm 35 now. I was born in 1986. So when "What Do I Have to Do" is from their Wither, Blister, Burn, and Peel album, which came out, what year? 96. So I would have been 10 or so when the song came out, but I'm pretty sure it was played on the radio quite a bit, all the way up through the 90s and even into the early 2000s. When I graduated from high school in 2005, I think it was on the radio every now and then. But I heard the song a few times, and it must have been around 1999, 2000. I heard the song a few times over the course of a few years, and I thought, I like this song. I think it's interesting. I'm going to go get the album. So went to the only place that was available to me when I was growing up to purchase music, which was Walmart. Went to Walmart, and the only album that they had there was, of course, Darkest Days. And I remember buying it, getting it home, and then actually like looking at it and thinking, what the heck? What Do I Have to Do is not on this album. So then I put it in and I listened to it, and I remember when I got to Save Yourself, I thought it was Save Yourself, I remember thinking, oh, I've heard this song. And so then I kind of had a bit of a connection for this album. But I tell that story just to sort of like have a little bit of an introduction as to how I was introduced to the band. And I don't want to talk forever about all their albums and all this stuff and the things that I think, but I do think that there are certain interesting conversations that can be had about this band. I do have with me here their first album, which is On God, from 1992, is it? 93. Actually, it says 93 and 94, so it's probably released in 94, some of it recorded in 1993. I have that album, then, of course, Wither, Blister, Burn, and Peel, Darkest Days, and I also have... I know a lot of people don't really care for this album as much, and they never talk about it when they talk about Stabbing Westward. Their self-titled album, Stabbing Westward. And then I also actually own in physical copy the very first The Dreaming album. Wow, that's a crazy photo of them. Look at that. If I can get the lighting to work there. Sorry, I don't have the lighting set up perfectly. That is just Doesn't that just look like Atreyu or, I don't know, My Chemical Romance or something? Just a band of that time, 2008. So those are the albums that I have here. And I will just say, like, off the bat, Ungod is an album I haven't listened to very much. I tried listening to it the other day. Once I found out about this, I've been listening to Stabbing Westward the last few days. And I tried listening to it, and the production is not the greatest, but it's also not the worst. I feel like this is it's almost, their whole catalog really is very interesting in the way that they craft their albums. There's a lot of down tempo, a lot of chill in terms of like tempo and feeling. Nothing ever feels chill. It's always usually very dark, atmospheric. But there's a lot of like downtime on all of the Stabbing Westward albums, maybe with the exception of their self-titled. But there's a lot of like quiet moments with just one or two instruments going, maybe just some sparse electronic stuff, some soundscape things going on. And then things will attack and come out of nowhere. And that's how What Do I Have to Do is basically the foundation of. There's a majority of that song is quiet, and then there's the big chorus and then the bridge and stuff. But on God, I don't know if I've ever actually listened to this all the way through. I'm sure I've listened to it in chunks, but I don't think I've ever listened to it all the way through in one sitting, and I probably don't appreciate it as much as I should. But this is the album that I've listened to the most of their catalog. Wither, Blister, Burning Peel, I eventually got, obviously, after Darkest Days. And I remember enjoying it. However, I don't think that the vocals are necessarily the best. The very first song on this album, I Don't Believe, I think is a great example of what kind of annoys me about some of his vocals on this album. Christopher Hall has this amazing, very unique voice. And when you hear him, I feel like you can tell it's him. And he has this, like, garbliness to his voice that he uses really great on most of their songs, but sometimes when he is pushing it and the vocals are a little bit more intense, it almost sounds like he's got like water or in his throat. Like it's really gargly almost sounding. And I really, the first track, I Don't Believe, is really a great example of that. And I feel like I just don't care for this album as much as Darkest Days or Darkest Days. Though there are some really good songs on here, and obviously What Do I Have to Do is like the standout track from this album. But I enjoy the production of this. It's definitely a lot better than Ungod. But in my opinion, it's not as good overall as Darkest Days. I've been listening to this album for the last 2 days, sort of in chunks, and I didn't listen to the entire thing. But I was just listening to it now about an hour and a half ago, trying to sort of like get in the mindset for this video. And since it's been 21 years since their self-titled album came out, and I think that's probably the longest stretch that a band has gone without releasing an album that I've experienced. So I'm really excited to listen to this, but in going back and listening to some of their albums, like I've already kind of mentioned, the quiet moments are now, as I'm 21 years older, obviously, than the last time I heard new Stabbing Westward. And so my musical tastes have changed. I feel like I've matured a lot as a person, let alone as just more than just like my musical taste, even though that has matured a lot more. And even in recent years, I've been getting a lot more into different sort of prog music, progressive metal, progressive electronic rock music, things like that. And what really struck me when I was listening to some of their catalog was that, as I mentioned, all these quiet moments, but also just the length of the songs, the way a lot of the songs connect together. You know, I can remember even being in high school at the time, listening to this and having the first track on this end with him saying the words that would be the chorus of track 2. So the track 1 ends with him muttering the phrase that is the words that are the chorus for track 2. And I remember thinking, that's actually really awesome. It shows that they put effort into crafting the album as a whole. And I really, really appreciate that so much more now than I did back in the day. And listening to this album now over the last few days, it strikes me as being so much more progressive than I ever would have given it credit for in the past. I think that, you know, when people think of Stabbing Westward, and especially if you listen to the lyrics, read the lyrics and stuff, the world is such a different place now in 2022 than it was back in 98, back from like 95 up to 2005 or so. Like, it's such a cliche, but I think back to like when you think back, I feel like people have a tendency to look on like goth kids and the goth movement and stuff that happened with all the music and everything that came with that. I feel like people have a tendency to look back on that and think of like South Park and the goth kids on South Park. I see that stuff referenced every now and then, when people are talking about darker, sort of more introspective things and just like more negative outlook on the world and things. And it's funny because at the time when I was in high school, I never dressed goth or anything like that. I've always had lots of black shirts, lots of black band shirts and things. But when I was in high school, I guess I really didn't. I really didn't even care about what I wore at all. I don't think I even really registered what I looked like at all until I got to like college or so, which again would have been around 2005, 2006. And I definitely liked all the things that the goth kids liked way more than the Nelly and all the stuff that the Cottonmouth Kings, that kind of stuff that the football players, the basketball players, the other kids listened to. But at the time, I remember thinking like, gosh, all the black clothing, all the cool hairstyles, the like, just like negative emotions and the introspective feelings and it's kind of hard to put into words, but that whole sort of like goth vibe at the time, I really, really loved. I really did. And when I look back on it now, I think of it very fondly. I know a lot of people like to, make fun and poke and stuff, poke fun at the bands and kids who dressed like that and all this stuff, and they associate it with all these negative things. But for me, I always thought it looked really cool. I loved the bands that had all these cool, crazy gothic looks to them, and as I was in high school, I was getting more into metal and different things like that. So there was all these different sort of subcultures and things floating around me that I paid attention to on a surface level. And now when I look back on it, sort of understanding a little bit more about the world, I definitely think that I was like a goth kid at heart, at soul, and in listening to the lyrics and like reflecting about Stabbing Westward, like I can totally see why people would not necessarily take them seriously, but I feel like that is doing a disservice to those people, and it's being small-minded in a very negative way. I think that there is something in this band, and particularly, like I said, over the last few days, I've been listening to Darkest Days. I feel like this album is like a masterpiece in certain ways. I'm not saying it's the most perfect, greatest album of all time, but I feel like the way the songs connect, the way that the emotions, the ups and downs, there's like one crazy happy song on here. There's all sorts of like, I'm not the kind of person that usually pays attention to the meanings of songs that much. Lyrics are like the last thing I pay attention to. I'm much more focused on music production, mic placement, how things were recorded, usually stuff about like the mixing process, how things were mixed or edited, why things are where they're panned in the stereo spectrum, things like that. The lyrics and the emotion of the song come second to me and much further behind all those other things. But when you listen to the lyrics, there are so many clever things being done, so many juxtapositions. One song ends and the next song is like a direct juxtaposed thought. It's the complete opposite of what the last words were in the song before it. And it's so clever and so well done and so clearly intentional that I feel like there's like a respect that needs to be put on this band. And for me personally, in particular, the Darkest Days album, I think that I've always held this album in high regard. And for me, the main reason for that is the absolute insane sounds that they used on this album. This album was one of the first albums that really got me to sit and think about the music in the way that I think about music mostly now, and that is, What are the sounds? How did they get put together? How did this band choose these sounds to be here? Because the best thing to me about this album, on top of all these other things I've already mentioned that they do so well, is that every single song has specifically unique elements to that individual song that help completely separate it from all the other songs on the album, yet the entire album feels like cohesive. And I think that every song has unique sounding synths, really cool use of samples, really interesting choices of sounds to build and craft a song around. A lot of the songs start with synths or more almost like a soundscape thing. There's some of it that reminds me now, looking back on it, listening to it, there's like a lot of Depeche Mode, and there's a lot of Portishead and sort of different trip hop stuff that I never picked up on at the time. Listening to this, there's a lot of trip hop influence here, and I'm really happy that I've gone back, listened to this stuff, and I'm so excited to get into the new album. But just to finish my thoughts here, I think that this album is so special, and I love all the individual, what I always refer to on my channel and just in life as the musical sprinkles. What are the elements to a song that aren't drums, bass, guitar, vocals? That is the foundation of the song. Like the foundation of the cake or whatever you're putting sprinkles on. If you take the sprinkles away, that food is still what it is. But you put the sprinkles on it, and it automatically makes the food look completely different and gives it all this different color, different texture, all these different things. When you think about that in terms of a song, and I think in Stabbing Westward songs, it's a little bit more important than sprinkles would be to a cake, if we're going with our analogy. But the synths and the different elements to the songs that are not guitar, bass, drums, vocals. There are a lot of songs on here where it's just a guitar, very intimately playing soft, dark stuff. They're not playing these heavy, crunchy things. They're playing broken chords. They're playing a melody on the guitar very slowly. It's a little distorted. There's reverb, there's all this stuff on it, but there's always sort of something else happening in the background. No matter how many elements are happening, there's always something else happening in the background. And it's creating this very cool, dark, moody aesthetic, this background soundscape that I absolutely love. But then, totally opposite of that, you have crazy sounds. Like, listen to this. That is a sound that they built a song off of. Now, when you listen to that, it's like, that's not an enjoyable sound. It's a grating, almost shrill sound. But then there's these like things underneath it, and it really is this unsettling feeling with this sort of almost like happy sounding like bell type things underneath it. And then the song transitions into the drums and the band and everything coming in, and the diddle-diddle-diddits go away and are replaced by the toms. So like there's just this brilliant songcraft happening that I really truly appreciate listening to it now. And it's stuff that I had noticed at the time, back in the day, but nothing that I would have ever been able to articulate or to understand on like a deep level like I can now. I just feel like this album is so full of, even if you think about Save Yourself, that like what a cool and interesting sound, what a cool and interesting sample. It sounds like a vocal sample to me. What a cool thing to build a song off of. And it makes me wonder how the song was crafted. Was the guitar riff written first, and then they created that sound to put underneath everything, and then realized it was so cool, they put it at the beginning of the song, and then sort of crafted the rest of the song around it. There's so many examples of things on this album that you wouldn't necessarily think would belong with everything that's happening. And then on top of all this crazy music, there are these like just depressing lyrics that are, for the most part, depressing lyrics that are so, if you take them out of context, could be so cliche and eye-rolly. Like, let's see if I can find an example. Like the opening lines of When I'm Dead. I know the tears you're crying in your bed at night alone. I've cried those tears 1,000 times. But those shallow, empty songs about suicide are patronizing. You've got to learn to face your fears. Like, that's more hopeful than I would think it would be listening to it. But there's just so many moments where Christopher Hall will the song is it what just there's all this talk about. I wish I had better examples, but I can't think of it now that I'm recording. But there's just all this like desperation, and there's all this like just intense sadness, and there's all this foreboding, and just this unrelenting feeling of unhappiness, and it just is this like permeating thing, and it's not really done tongue-in-cheek at all. I like certain bands like Poison Black or even Sentenced, where their whole thing is like Lemony Snicket style, like, we suck, we're terrible, the whole world sucks, we might as well give it up and cash in our chips. And like, just the whole aesthetic of those two bands are, and even Lemony Snicket's Here's Unfortunate Events type stuff, is like that. It's like but it's like self-aware the whole time. Stabbing Westward, I feel, is one of those bands that took it all pretty seriously in the way that the music sounds. But then there is that one like Super Happy song. So whatever, I'm talking about this album a little bit too long, but I just think it's so special and so incredibly unique. And at the time, maybe it fit in with some of the other things that was happening. Like, I always think of the band Crossbreed as well with this band. If you're unfamiliar with them, definitely look them up. They're a bit more intense. They only really ever had one album come out. They did have a second album come out, but I think it was much later, maybe even after they were not a band anymore. But they, to me, really used interesting synths and different sort of keyboard elements that reminds me a little bit of Stabbing Westward. But for the most part, Stabbing Westward just had such unique keyboard and production elements to their songs. That's the thing that I noticed right away and that has kept me attached to them through all these years. But now listening to it, it's the songwriting, the way the album's put together, all that stuff. So this album's so incredible. And then I just have to mention the absolute... the courage that it must have taken to go from that album to making this album, a basically acoustic rock album, like totally different sounding, completely sonically different, much closer to something like Jimmy Buffett than sonically than Depeche Mode or Portishead, like I mentioned. Like, so different. Obviously not happy, and obviously not songs about like swimming in the ocean and stuff, but acoustic guitars, a little bit more of that sort of early 90s grungy feel to it, which they have had throughout their whole career. Just a real big leap to take in making this album, and I don't think that it was received very well. I don't remember at the time. I wasn't paying attention to the reception. I remember getting it and thinking, what is this? I also remember thinking one of my all-time favorite Stabbing Westward song is Unhappy, or it's just called Happy. Track 5 off of this album. I think it's the best song they've ever written. I think it's one of the best songs I've ever heard. I think it's fantastic. It's almost got like a Western feel to it, and it's got this really cool bell chimey part to it. I absolutely love that song. And I think that it's a good encapsulation of what this album is. I really don't like the album, the fact that almost every song on this album fades out. I particularly hate that. And they have done a lot with fading songs out throughout their career, so I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that on Chasing Ghosts, there's nothing that does fade out, but if it does, whatever. Okay, so that's my feelings on Stabbing Westward in the past. Now, just really quickly, I'm so excited to hear an album from a band that hasn't made music together in 21 years. I'm aware of The Dreaming. I have their first album, as I showed you. I didn't follow their second and third album. I think they had one about puppets, maybe, or Puppet, and then another one, I think. And I never followed those albums. I don't know how. I just kind of missed them. I really love Christopher Hall's vocals, and I think that The Dreaming style was really good, but I just never stayed up with them, I guess. For whatever reason. So I can't talk about them, really, but I know that one of the reasons Stabbing Westward is together now is because The Dreaming kind of fell apart, and Stabbing Westward had some like a reunion or something in 2016 or so. And they had like a fun time together, and they've gotten back together, and I think someone left, and there was shuffling around. But I looked on Wikipedia just before this, and I believe on Chasing Ghosts here, 2 of the original members are still there, obviously Christopher Hall, and I'm not sure what instruments he plays, but the other guy that was sort of like the other main guy in the band, and I believe the other 2 or 3 guys in the band are relatively newer, but been around for a while. I'm not sure if anyone was in The Dreaming with Christopher Hall, but I'm aware that a lot of these guys have been active in the music industry for the last 21 years, but I still think it's going to be fascinating to see what they come up with. Like, Breaking Benjamin had a humongous break and came back with an album that I felt was incredibly mediocre, which is exactly how I felt about their last album before their huge break and the lawsuit and everything. So I'm really hoping that this album, Chasing Ghosts, isn't that they are trying to do that, chase the sound and the feeling that they had back in like late 90s, early 2000, 2001. Like I hope that it's them allowing themselves to make music that they would make now, 21 years later. I don't want them to try to recapture what they had, back when they were at their peak. And so I'm hoping the production is fantastic. Sometimes bands like this can come back together, and it's more about them getting back together than it is about them crafting an album and making something that sounds sonically better than anything else they've ever done before. I feel like 40 Below Summer and Flaw have kind of fallen into that before. Both of those bands took breaks for a little bit, and they got back together, and they made an album, and they were so excited, and they went on tour, and they've been at it since then. But those first albums, when they came back, I feel production-wise, I was a little bit let down. But there's also something to be said for it's a lot more common nowadays for people to self-publish an album, to self-record, to do all these different things yourself, or for a significantly lower budget than all of these albums would have been back in the early 2000s, late 90s. And I do know that Stabbing Westward was picked up by a record label, and I know they've released some songs and maybe an EP or something here and there. And I want to say that I recall like 5 or so years ago them maybe re-recording and releasing What Do I Have to Do again, but I'm not positive about that. I've heard not a single second of anything off of Chasing Ghosts. I have no clue what any of these songs are about, what they sound like. I have no clue. I have high hopes for this, though, because, as I said, everything that Stabbing Westward has done indicates to me a purpose. They had intent when they were creating each of their albums. And I do feel like even on their self-titled album, that they went into the studio and crafted the album with very specific intentions, and they followed through with it all the way through. And that's what I love to see nowadays in the music industry. I love to see someone follow through and complete the project and take ownership of it and have like, this is our piece of art. And so I'm really hoping that they put all the love and care that they have in their music in the past into this album. So, I'm just excited. So without further ado, let's get into it. However, I have one more thing I have to do. Look here on my table, and I'll be right back with you in a second. So I had to get some Mountain Dew for this video, as I usually have in my videos. But, of course, with all the Halloween stuff, I did think I could get a Voodoo Mountain Dew. But I think I drank that in my last video, which was my soil work reaction. So I'm just going to go with one of my favorite beverage of all time, Mountain Dew Voltage. And in the bottom of my glass, you may be asking, what is this? It looks orange on here, but I promise you it's red in real life. I have some frozen Kool-Aid on the bottom of my glass. And this is going to make one of my favorite things to drink, which is my Blue Mountain Dew Voltage. Blue Raspberry Mountain Dew with some cherry Kool-Aid on the bottom. And then as the ice melts, it will float to the top, mix together, and we'll end up with sort of like a purple drink. Unless I drink it so fast, we don't get to that point, but I doubt that that's going to happen. So, now, I am going to be listening to this album on Spotify, and it's the free version. So when we get to an ad, which I'm sure I will make sure that I edit everything out, but I will clearly have labeled on screen. Again, if I edit this video and it gets blocked and I can't have the audio in the video, I am so sorry if that happens. Know that it kills me a lot more than you, but I know people like to listen to the music in videos like this, and I do too when I watch videos like this, so I really hope that I can include that. What the heck? Hold on a sec. Okay, so anyway, like I was saying, I really hope that I can include the audio in this video. If not, again, I sincerely apologize. There will be links in the description if I need to have them there. They'll be there regardless. But one thing I want to mention real quick is that I have my headphones connected to a headphone extender, which I have to use. And so unless... I'm usually pretty good about this, but if I'm not thinking about it, the headphone extender is kind of a cheap one that I bought off of Amazon, and it actually reverses the stereo image. So if I'm not thinking about it and I say something is on the right side or something is on the left side of the stereo image, and you're listening and for you it's on the reverse side, just know that at that moment I wasn't thinking about it and I said what I was hearing, but it's the reverse for you. So the other thing I will say is I don't have the CD for this because I didn't know that this was available and until just like I said a few days ago, and I didn't want to wait till I could get it in the mail. But if I listen to this and I really like it, which I'm really hoping is the case, I'll definitely purchase the album and have it in CD format. There's a lot of really good stuff coming out actually just today. I have in the mail, it should be coming here soon, the brand new Editors album. And then also there was a couple other things. Oh yeah, the Rasmus, one of my favorite bands of all time from Finland. They had their 10th studio album come out, and their first album in quite a few years, I think since 2016. So I'm really excited about all that stuff, but I'll order all that stuff, get all that stuff, do videos for that stuff later. But for now, 21 years later, let's listen to Chasing Ghosts by Stabbing Westward. Again, we're on Spotify, so we'll see what happens in terms of ads and whatnot. And I'll have to adjust my volume here, but hopefully everything will be all right. Track 1, in true Stabbing Westward fashion, I see is called I Am Nothing. Starting right now. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Holy cow. That synth was like a dubstep transformer sound. That was like something Clayton or something off the Fixed record label would have. Amazing. Christopher Hall sounds identical to the way he always has. I love the big spread out synth bass. I love it. Little blips and bloops. The drums sound great. Wow. That different kick drum kicked in there. Completely different sounding kick drum than was earlier in the song. Wow. Now the kick is very... Okay, so that kick sound is gone. Now we have a much more lower, more 808 sounding electronic kick here. Now the snare has this crazy, like almost 80s gated reverb on it that just snaps and then snaps back real quick. It's a lot of sound, a thick reverb sound that happens very fast and then drops away really fast. So when that kick hits, it's a little bit weird. It's almost jarring. See, the snare's staying the same, and during the chorus here, the kick sounds so big, dry, and forward in the mix that it almost makes the snare feel further away than it does during the verse. The guitars definitely are not as huge as I kind of expected them to be, but that Transformers sound is so cool. Yes. I love that. I love that. Again, this is exactly what I was talking about, like that crushing, oscillating synth bass Transformers sound is the basis for this entire song. Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, love the stutter edit there. Now, not a lot of vocal overdubs that I've noticed at all. Maybe none. But Christopher Hall's vocals are so unique and so him, and he's so versatile, and he can be so intense, bordering on like metal screams. I don't know if it necessarily needs background vocals. I personally like when there's like harmony vocals, background vocals. I've talked about that a lot on my channel. Gang vocals. Background vocals can make or break an album. But some bands don't need them. And we'll see. Wow. Really hits. Very dynamic. The louds are loud. And I will say too, I'm listening on the free version of Spotify, so I'm only listening to 192 kilobit MP3. The CD through my giant CD player over there with my big speakers blasting, this would probably sound fantastic. It does sound really good this way too. I love that. Reminded me of something, but I can't put my finger on it, but very Transformers-y. Ooh, love that. Okay, Damaged Goods, track 2. Ooh. I want this to sound totally different. I don't want the bass, boss-letting bass in there anymore. Maybe a little bit here and there, but that's what I want from a Stabbing Westward album, like I said. Oh, love it. The different panned. Oh, and it sounds like it's a... Love that sample. The panning. Okay, yes. We got a different synth bass in there. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh man. Oh. This is great. I'm loving this. What an interesting sound. Totally dry, right in the middle. Love the synth bass. Very and one. Almost harkening back to like 80s, like some synthwave stuff, dark wave. But also totally something you could see them using, you know, 25 years ago. I feel like this song definitely sounds less compressed, less huge, but we'll see what happens during the chorus. Maybe it's just a very dynamic album, which is interesting. Very different than a lot of music being made today, though not as bad as it was back in, you know, the compression was. Okay, the vocal choice interesting there during the chorus. Felt like all the high end went out of the mix there during the chorus. I don't really like the way that sounded on my first listen. Felt like the high frequencies went and it sucked into, like, you know, we were coming out of these big nice speakers, then all of a sudden it was like a crappy little radio speaker. Definitely I will say the audio quality of this track sounds less than the track 1. Track 1 sounded much more high fidelity than this one. Well, the hi-hat, the... I don't like the choice to have the vocals become what they're doing here. It sounds like they ran it through some sort of like an amp, you know, a digital amp, a distortion thing. Cool guitar riff there. I'm not liking the choice here to suck all the high frequencies out. I don't get that. I like the vocal melody though. I like the alternating hi-hats. And the guitars feel big, but it just felt like all the air got sucked out of the mix. I mean, this sounds good. Now I'm curious about the rest of the album. Like, are we going to get consistency? Or are these songs that they've worked on over the course of years? And maybe they finished one song a couple years ago, finished the next song, you know, a couple months or before this album came out. Okay, Right Away sounds better. Ooh. Yes, I'm definitely getting like a gothic synthwave vibes from some of this. I love that. Also, shout out to the album cover art for this. It looks really good. I can't wait till I get the CD and can actually look at it, read the liner notes and stuff. I wish I like to do my reactions with CD so I have the liner notes and everything, but... Alright. Again, here the high frequencies sound much better. I'll turn the music up a little bit. Maybe a bit too much. I love this. I love this so much. Yes. Yes, the high frequencies didn't get sucked up. And he's going to his more intense vocals. Keeping it with the offbeat hi-hats. Nice dancing, 4-to-the-floor rhythm. Snare and the kick both sound nice and tight. I love this keyboard part that's happening. It's like a sustained bell sound off to one side, and like a lower mid-range vocal patch off the other side, which is very cool. Automatically gives it that sort of like 80s Depeche Mode-y sound, and I love that.
I realized that my passion was dead. Inside you, I felt so alone.
I wasn't sure about this chair because the arms are so high, so I don't know. It's just something I was trying. But I feel like I can kind of snuggle in here. Yep. No background vocals, though. No overdubs. I do feel like his vocals got thinner, though, here. But not as bad as the previous song. Some nice echoes, some delays there. Big, heavy part here. It definitely sounds like played drums. Yes. Okay, so far these first 3 songs, it definitely feels like each song is its own individual thing. But the songs don't really have any connection to each other. They're not doing that like single piece of art, which is totally fine. Yep. I love that bell sound and the patches that they're using. Again, every song so far has had unique individual elements to it that really make them stand apart. All 3 songs sound totally different, and I love that. Nice, like the alternating bass. Very cool. Every song sort of kind of just faded out after the last chord was strummed. Okay. Also, I don't know if you could see it in the video there because I don't have my video pulled up, but my ice just floated to the top. Okay. Like the programmed drum beat here. Bass line. Love the sort of synth strings in the back. Sound like 80s synth strings. Love that. Ooh, this song is 7.5 minutes. Let's go. Yes. Heck yeah. Love the swirling feeling. Love it. Now we got a little guitar part in there too. Very nice. Kind of palm muted. No high frequencies in it really. Very nice. Very tasty. Ooh. Love it. Love it. Love these nice slow synth pads. The song definitely has a feeling of building here. Got some rising synths in there. Some filter sweeps. What a good voice he has. Love the bass here. That's clearly the standout element here. I mean, it almost sounds like a Tool or Maynard bass. And I will say I'm not a big fan of Tool, but I'm aware of what they sound like. I've heard a lot of their songs that were popular, you know, when I was in high school. Love it. All right, where are we going? What are we gonna do? Yeah, okay. Wow. That's amazing to me that he sounds so identical. Yes, love it. This is great. This is my favorite song so far. Dude, I love the patience here. Let the song build. Let there be a minute and a half, minute 45 long intro. Very cool. Not a lot of bands have the patience to do this. Especially nowadays when a lot of artists are just making 2 minute or less long songs. Atreyu came out with an album earlier this year that I listened to, or maybe it was last year. Every song is like 2 minutes, 5 seconds was the longest song. So disappointing to me. I personally don't want that. I want an artist to take their time and give me 5-6 minute long songs like Depeche Mode does. Like Poets of the Fall released earlier this year with their album Ghostlight. Have a minute long guitar solo, you know? Add the sections, add the patience. Let the song fulfill itself. Again, guitar solo. Not a fast, like, shredding guitar solo or anything. But I don't know if that would necessarily fit, especially with this song. Ooh, very cool there. The frequency of the guitar kind of built a little bit to almost some feedback, and it was right at the same frequency of as his voice. Very cool. Yeah. Now I will say, if you listen to the drums, you can hear the open hi-hat, but there's also like a closed hi-hat in there. And there's also some different things happening off to the side, maybe with a little bit of a flutter echo. snare drum here sounds very hollow. The reverb, very big, wide stereo reverb. I love this. I love a long, drawn-out song. The other thing I don't want it to do is fade out, but... I am noticing a lot lack of higher frequencies in this song. Again, it could be the MP3s that I'm listening on, you know, through Spotify, but it doesn't sound as crispy of a mix. The high frequencies, the definition isn't here as much. I feel like the song sounded really good within itself the entire time, but compared to the last song in track 1, I feel like it's definitely missing some of that crispiness. Love it. No fade out. Love it. Yep. Very cool. Very cool. Not sure if my... I'm recording this through Wasteland Rod now. I'm recording this through Streamlabs OBS, and so for some reason with my computer, whenever I have Streamlabs open and a sound is playing and it stops, it like repeats the last nanosecond of audio till the next second of audio starts. So I don't know if my computer is recording that or not, but if it is in there, I don't know if I'll be able to get rid of it completely. So I'll just have to point that out. There might be some sort of like a or something like between tracks. I've noticed it's done it several times now. Usually it doesn't necessarily do it all the time, but love this. Little industrial sound there, distorted drum. Just this synth pad going, very ominous sounding chords. Okay, all right. Very Stabbing Westward with that note in there, that harmonic note in there. Switching to almost like a dance sound here. Very cool. The synth bass is back. So interesting that the last song, the function, like the main part, the focal point of that song was the bass guitar. I think that was a bass guitar. It could have been a low detuned guitar, but pretty sure it was a bass guitar with all the synths and everything. And then here we have synth bass again. Wow, love this. So, you know, again, his vocals here during the chorus, they've put some sort of effect on him or run him through something. The high frequencies are gone from his vocals. It sounds a little distorted, but the music didn't do that as well. The music is staying high frequency, high fidelity. So I'm more okay with it in this song. I don't necessarily like that it's doing that. I feel like it's doing that a little too much. But we'll see. The vocals here sound very thin. Also maybe a little distorted at a higher frequency. But sometimes for mixing purposes, you would definitely intentionally do that to make the vocals sit on top of everything else that's happening and not have anything competing frequencies. Guitar sounds great here. Drums sound like real drums, very dry. The kick drum doesn't have a ton of oomph to it, but it sounds like a kick drum and it's serving its purpose for sure. Whoa. Some of the guitars have sounded very Gravity Kills to me, which is really interesting. Very, almost sort of like electronic guitar sounding. A little bit. I'm sure they were all played through amps and whatnot, but... They got a lot of effects on his vocals, but every word, the last word of every phrase, they have that extra delay on it that's significantly more prominent and spread out.
Lost in this wasteland. Without you, I won't survive. Lost in this wasteland. Without you.
Love it. Love the crunchiness of the guitars. I like the tone of the guitars a lot. And there's almost sort of like a harsh synth line in there too, doing something like more. I hear it in there doing something. Love this little extra bit here when there's more to the guitars. Wow. Very cool. Like I like that. Like having a song like that that's a little bit more straightforward, heavier. Nice. Especially coming after the long, crazy song that we just had. Now we're going into Control Z. Okay, Control Z. Ooh. Yep, love it. I finished my beverage during the commercial break there. Ooh, this is nice. I love those big chords in the back, those constant, the synth pads. Ooh, love the fluttery. I can't tell exactly what the sound is. Could be just like a shaker, like someone tapping like a shaker. Probably just an electronic sound that they found. Ooh. Love it. Love the addition there. Oh, and there's even some tambourine in there now. Yes. Ooh. Oh! Love that. Love the way he ended that torn apart part, which of course torn apart. And of course Control Z, the two most important keyboards, the most important keyboard shortcut of all time when it comes to being creative. You can try whatever you want, because at the end of the day you can just Control Z it back to the way it was before. It would be a shocking amount of times if my keyboard could tell you how many times in a day I hit Control Z. Love the riff here. The drums have been really good throughout this whole album. A lot of the time they sound like real drums the way they were recorded rather than having it been replaced. Here I would say it could have been replaced, or all the drums, for as far as I know, could have all been recorded with electronic drum kit. Sometimes a drummer in the studio will have real cymbals, but electronic kick, electronic snare, maybe electronic toms. And then, or you could even put triggers on your real drum kit too, if that would make you feel more comfortable. And that's how drums are recorded. Then you just pick the snare, bass drum, the snare sound, the bass drum sound, the tom sounds. Pick the sound that you think works best. Then you have real cymbals. Sometimes cymbals are all electronic too. Or you just record a real drum track and then you drum replace or drum overdub. There's lots of different things you can do. And I think some people feel like certain things are cheating or are mean less. I do not think that way. I never have. However you can get the best sounds you can get is what you should do when you're making your album. Love this. Filter sweep here a little bit in this. Yeah. The percussion in this song really is standing out. Lots of really good flitty things happening to the sides. Yes, that like metallic hit. I love that. Love it. Torn apart! Of course, because he's sung Torn Apart so many times before. These lies have torn my world apart. I can't do it while the song's going. It's in a different key than that song. But it's awesome. A band like this with the legacy that they have, he knew singing Torn Apart would make people think about that. What a great melody, too. Love it. Very interesting sounding hi-hat here. That definitely doesn't sound like a real sounding hi-hat. I love this. Again, there's definitely some gravity kills to this, which is interesting. I mean, not surprising at all, but dang it, with that sound. Okay, Crawl. Love this. Love the record scratching noise in there. That's just unsettling right away. Makes you think of a horror movie. Makes me think of Portishead. Oh, I love it. Oh, wasn't expecting that. Almost like a happy sounding or hopeful sounding boom. Doop, 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 doop. Ooh, acoustic guitar. Ooh, and a rim shot. Wow. For those of you who don't know what a rim shot is on a guitar, just in case you're unfamiliar, when a drummer takes, usually you take the stick and you rotate it in your hand. I don't have any. I got my... Take the stick, you rotate it in your hand, so you're holding the smaller part, and you take the end of the drum, the end of the stick. Wow, this sounds awesome. You put it against the inner lip of the snare drum, and then you kind of lightly tap the edge of the snare drum with the bigger end of the drumstick, and what it does is it gives the hollowness of the snare drum along with the rim, like a rim click, like a click of the sticks when you're just hitting the rim. Hopefully I explained that in a way that you can understand with my visual aid of the clicker. Okay, I love that way that sounded, but I wasn't paying attention enough to really analyze it, so we'll get it on the second time around. Piano. Yes, there's nothing I love more in this world than low piano notes. Thick, low piano notes. One of the things I love so much about Rob Zombie's music is his not being afraid to just play simple piano parts. Whatever the guitar riffs are doing, double it on the piano or whatever. It gives it this very cool sound. Oh, okay, so now there's a distorted guitar where there was acoustic guitar before. Cool. I love this song feels a lot more like it's a drum loop, and things are happening around the drum loop. I really enjoy that. Should check if I'm still recording. Whoops. Okay, so this is definitely a shorter song. We only did the chorus twice, but we had an interesting intro. Feels almost more like a transitional song rather than like a focal point. Like it though. Love the drum loop. Very cool though. Very neat. I wouldn't mind having that song last longer. Again with this. If anyone knows what's causing that, if you're hearing it, which I assume you are. Love it. Again, those. Ooh. Everything I'm hearing, I'm loving. Love this. Love everything. Those toms sound awesome. Oh. Okay. Oh, we're adding layers of guitars. Guitars do sound a little weird.
I failed to realize I found everything in you.
Ooh, love the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Yeah. Sounds almost like a piano, but probably just a little synth patch. But love it. Love that. Oh my god, it's cool. Again, the sort of like flitting of percussion stuff. Ooh, driving. Not sure the way the guitars sound here. It almost sounds like they've got reverb on them. Interesting, different sounding for sure. Not the stereotypical track of the guitar on the right, track of the guitar on the left to make it sound big and thick. That's not what we're getting. We're getting multiple tracks of guitar layered, but it almost feels like the bigness is coming from a reverb or something like that. It sounds very roomy. And then just that driving beat in the middle. I almost really don't even hear any cymbals at all. Dead and Gone, of course, the title of one of the famous Sookie Stackhouse novels, which I'm a big fan of. Huh. You once told me I'm the soundtrack to your life, but I doubt you'll ever hear this song. Huh. Huh. This is great. This is a good song. I really should go back and check out those other two. I think there was two. Those other two Dreaming albums I never listened to. Like I said, I don't know why I never got them. Never got into them. My big nose itches so much. I don't know why. Must be some errant hair in there or something. Come on. Yes. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Ah! Ghost. Here we go. Love it. Ooh. That little tingy. Oh, yes, I love it. I love these like And One synth basses. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you don't know who the band And One is. I'm not talking about the clothing brand And One. There is this This is just like And One. Please go look up any of like And One's most recent 6 albums. They are a fantastic band from Germany. Incredible. Their last album was a trilogy of albums called Trilogy. But Tanzomat is incredible. Body Pop is incredible. All their albums are incredible. Going all the way back to the late 80s, early 2000s, early 90s. Love this though. Are the guitars gonna come in here? See, I feel like love this. Guitars, drums, bass, everything's sounding great. Wow. That's a very Birthday Massacre sounding synth in the middle there. And if you're unfamiliar with the Birthday Massacre, go look up any of their albums. They had an album come out earlier this year, which is total fire. Go check it out. If you like Stabbing Westward, I definitely think you would enjoy the Birthday Massacre. Maybe The Dreaming even toured with the Birthday Massacre. I don't know why, but that sounds right in my head. See, they're definitely having this, like, I get what they're trying to do. The chorus is in, we need to change the vocals a little bit. But I would rather have them leave the vocals mostly the way they are during the verse, and then just have some additional layering of vocals come in. But sometimes some singers don't want to do that. Some singers are uncomfortable doing it. They just don't enjoy doing the different parts and things. But I will always shout to the rooftops that background vocals can make or break an album. But in this case, not having any, I think that that's okay. Christopher Hall's vocals definitely are enough to feel, oh. This basically is a Birthday Massacre song. I could see them doing this exact thing. We got a lot of song left here. Are we gonna get a good long outro? A little bit of like a tick-tock clock sound in there. Got a little juice. Cherry Kool-Aid, baby. Love it. You can really hear that synth bass going. I've been working on some music recently, and it's interesting. You can go through, create a whole song, sounds really great, but then after you're done, if it sounds a little thin, I've just basically gone back and added a synth bass underneath the entire thing that's basically just like some sub-frequencies. Basically just programmed in the exact part that the bass is playing. It makes the entire thing sound so much more professional and rounded and deeper and thicker. And I think I'm starting to realize that so many albums have that added to it. So many rock albums. Because you just, unless you have a perfectly sounding recorded bass, the bass guitar just doesn't have those sub-frequencies in it. And so anything that has nice, good, I mean, obviously you can get great sounding bass guitar and bass, but anyway, that's maybe a conversation for another time. But I'm willing to bet, like, every rock part on this album, when every guitars come in, There's no low frequencies coming from the guitars, and there's not enough coming from the bass. Okay. I hate that. It ruins it for me. That's so stupid. Hopefully, if you're not hearing what I'm hearing, it's again, every time, between every track, it's doing that thing. All right, 7.5 minutes. Do something awesome here. I would love to have like a broken guitar thing come in here. Oh, okay, all right. Give me some Stranger Things sounding stuff. That's fine too. Love it. A little bit of a, there's definitely a dissonance there. Okay. Okay. Very prominent vocal delays there. Ooh, love that. Oh. Interesting. Okay.
I was desperate to believe that this was real.
I love this. I love the delays. I love the slowness. I love the sort of slow pulsing background. You know, it's like waves. Right? It's like a pulsing, slow pulsing. It's gone.
I'm sorry that I've ruined everything.
Wow. Just these big, massive sort of synth strings. All the high end taken out of them, but there's still a little bit of that breathiness in there. You can hear. Very cool.
I wish that we could start over again. That this was not the end.
Wow. I'm hoping some drums and stuff come in this song now. It'd be cool if it was like this kind of the whole time, a little bit up and down, and I hear the pulsing is back. But it'd be cool to have some sort of like, you know. But it could be anything. Okay.
To be everything that you wanted.
Okay. Just a little bit, just a touch. Okay, yeah.
To be anything at all.
Okay. Almost like a heartbeat, very slow.
I knew that come a day
Yep.
you'd finally see
And again, those echoes are there.
that I'm not half the man you never thought I'd be.
I'm not half the man you never thought I'd be.
That I'm worthless. I'm sorry that I've ruined everything.
Very cool.
I'm not proud.
There's a few things in there that are just kind of like keeping the song pushing forward. And then just these massive synth strings.
That we could start over again. That this was not the end.
Not the end. Interesting vocal thing there. Ooh. There come the drums, but it is. I wish this was not the end of us, but it is on the downbeat. Hear the bass guitar in there, I think. That pinging thing is... Can't go much higher. Surprised there's been 2 songs, maybe 3 songs with swear words in them, but Spotify has not listed them as explicit at all, which is exactly how... Hold on, I got it. Exactly how Darkest Days never had a parental advisor. Neither did Wither, Blister, Burn, Peel. Ungod did not. Neither did Stabbing Westward. Nice guitar part here. However, the Dreaming Etched in Blood does. I love this. Now, this definitely sounds like Stabbing Westward to me right here. This slow guitar part. There were a lot of things like this on Darkest Days. A little bit more distorted, and not necessarily with the synth pad behind it, but a bit of an atmosphere behind it. Really enjoyed this last song. Really liked that. Guitar's gone. Now it's just the synth strings. Very interesting. All right, well, there we have it. Stabbing Westward, the first new Stabbing Westward in 21 years. Okay, so I think that this album was really impressive in a lot of ways. And in some ways, it's kind of what I expected it to be. I won't say that I'm disappointed because I didn't really necessarily expect certain things. There were some things that I wanted this album to be that they weren't. You know, I wanted every song to kind of flow into the next song and for the whole thing to be very thought out, very dynamic, like Darkest Days, and also, I believe to an extent, what Wither, Blister, Burn, Peel is. And it really wasn't that. It was much more like, here's a Stabbing Westward song, clear your palate. Here's a Stabbing Westward song, clear the mind. Here's a Stabbing Westward song, and there's just 10 different Stabbing Westward songs. And that's fine, because all of the songs sounded like Stabbing Westward. They did exactly what I wanted them to do. Every single song felt, this might sound like it's gonna contradict what I just said, but every song felt like its own unique individual song regarding the sounds that they were using, the specific patches on the keyboard, the specific programmed elements. And I will say one thing that I do really appreciate is that it really did sound like people were playing all of those things. It sounded like people were playing parts. That first song, having it be like the sort of like dubstep oscillating bass transformer sound, having that be sort of like the basis for the song, that was really surprising. I did not expect that. However, it totally fits with the idea of Stabbing Westward taking this specific sound, using it as the basis of a song, and their sound is very dark, gritty, crunchy, distorted, and heavy and intense and industrial, sort of. And so taking the idea of Stabbing Westward taking like this slow, this like low oscillating bass thing that's like just so massive sounding, it absolutely makes sense that they would have that be the basis for one of their songs in the year 2022. Track 2, like I said at the time, was really disappointing to me production-wise. I feel like when it got to the chorus, the whole song went and the high frequencies just got sucked out of it and there was none left. And even though the song got bigger because more elements came in, the guitars got crunchy and big because the high frequencies were pulled out, it almost felt like someone mastered the song it felt like someone mastered the verses. And then they were like, okay, we got to focus on the choruses here and make them a little different. There's too much high frequency there. It needs to be de-essed. It needs all this stuff. Let's just take the high frequencies out of the chorus and we'll master that part separately. And then we'll just put these chunks of things together. It actually sounded that bad to me. So I would say that was actually like a legitimate bad production moment. It legitimately sounded bad, in my opinion. Objectively sounded bad. That being said, I still think the song was cool. I think all the melody during that chorus was really nice, and I think the verse was interesting. They were trying to play around with the dynamics a little bit and the drums and things. In that first song, the fact that the kick drum was wildly different in the chorus than it was in the verse, at first threw me off a little bit, but I feel like it kind of ended up working with it. I feel like the kick drum was too loud during the chorus. That's why it really stuck out to me. Because I feel like in a lot of the other songs, the kick drum probably was very different in the choruses than it was in the verse. However, in the verse, it was a little bit more obvious that the drums were more of like and this is some of the other songs. I mean, not track 1. It was a little bit less obvious that, oh, now we have real sounding drums, and before we had electronic sounding drums. It was sort of a mixture of both in both parts. So even though I feel like that technique was used on the other tracks as well as track 1, it was a little too obvious, a little too on the nose. And the kick drum was just a little bit too loud during the chorus. So I would definitely say that was a negative for me. I think the variety of everything that you heard on all the songs was fantastic. I think his vocals were fantastic throughout. There were lots of moments where I really enjoyed what he was singing. I didn't really focus on the lyrics too much, but there were a few moments where certain things stuck out. The lyrics were depressing and everything like they have been. A lot of about failed romances and things like that, just like they were back in the day. But there were also a few positive moments, I would say. Musically, there were some surprising things happening. There were a lot more like synth patches or keyboard patches that were like vocal based, which made it feel more synth wavy or like Depeche Mode-y almost. There were some synthwave stuff. Like I said, not synthwave necessarily, but there were sounds that you would find in like synthwave, dark wave music, which was a little surprising to me. However, totally fits with what Stabbing Westward would be like if they were around today. Like I feel like, synthwave is making a bit of a resurgence now. Dark wave and stuff like that is getting to be a little bit more popular. And so having sounds that harken back to the 80s, I feel was really smart. And having some of these darker, more industrial synth basses and things verging on EBM territory is really smart for Stabbing Westward, and I feel like they did it really well. Like I mentioned, some of the songs did what the vocals did during track 2 on the album. They did it, but to a slightly less extent. My problem with track 2 was that everything, the frequencies, it felt like with everything, the frequencies went away, the high frequencies went away. Whereas in some of the other songs, Christopher Hall's vocals were really nice and crisp and clear during the verses, very high fidelity sounding. But then when it got to the chorus, they wanted to add a little bit extra punch to it, so they ran it through some sort of a digital amp, some sort of a filter type thing to add distortion to it. And then what happened was the high frequencies ended up being taken away. And I feel like it lost a lot of the definition, and it really felt like a completely different take on the vocals. And that always throws me off when that happens. I understand that stylistically that can be an intentional choice to, make something feel like a different part of the song and all this. And I understand the adding of the distortion, but I feel like Christopher Hall can add the distortion to his vocals just naturally by pushing his vocal cords more or whatnot. I'm not a vocal expert, but he definitely can sing clean, and he can also sing very harsh vocals. And so I feel like they maybe relied a little bit too much on the choruses throughout the album, on having effects on his vocals rather than letting him just sing the song and relying on his vocal performance. I I feel like the album would have felt a little bit more consistent that way. But some of the songs, you really could tell when they got to the chorus, here's the rock part of the song. Everything before was kind of this really cool, sparse, and that's what Stabbing Westward was known for back in the day. But I feel like they did a much better job with all the, like, having this, like, plodding, slow feel. And then when everything came in, it was this heavy weight that was being dropped on you. And the song was crunchy and beefy, and the bass and the guitars and everything sounded thick and rich. Whereas here, I feel like a lot of the guitar sounded a little bit thin. So to beef that up, they have the bass in there, of course, but then they also have these, like, synth basses and subsonic frequency things that I think really added to everything and made it sound really great. I'm not saying the guitar sounded bad really at all. But then to do these different effects to the vocals, I feel like it really separated the parts of the song, the sections of the song, in maybe not necessarily a good way. All the little, like, flitty percussion things throughout the whole album, I love those types of things. Having someone just playing the drums and then having all these extra little percussion things, all these little bleeps and bloops and synthetic hi-hats and things flitting around really can be really cool. It can make it feel unsettling. It can add obviously more to the more like little dynamics to the drums. It can also make the drum beat feel faster than it is. Rather than having the hi-hat playing, 16th notes or 32nd notes depending on how slow the song is. The hi-hat could just play quarter notes or eighth notes, just and then on the side you can have all these little, like, things, and it makes it feel like the song is progressing and moving forward. And that little flittiness is always something that I associated in my head with, like, a spider's legs, which I know is kind of a weird thing, but it always adds to sort of like the creepiness or the darkness of what I'm listening to. So I think that that was handled really well. All the synths were great. Like I said, it felt a lot of the time like the synths were actually being played on a keyboard, which is really nice, and something that a band who started in the early 90s and that's playing now, I think, is really cool. It's nice to hear someone playing an instrument rather than just having things be programmed, or just like you hold one key and then everything is programmed on the keyboard to do something. Or instead of playing a key, you're playing little, squares on a touchpad thing, and everything, it like triggers a sound or something like that. To actually have someone playing the chords and things on the string pads, the synth patches, string pads and different things. It was really nice. I really enjoyed all the keyboards throughout the album. There were a few songs that had, like, different elements to them that really helped the songs stand out. That one 7.5 minute long song with the bass guitar. I think it was a bass guitar riff, basically going the whole time. That whole song was based around the bass guitar, and then this sort of drum beat that happened, and these kind of chill sort of sounds happening around it. Really cool. Really enjoyed that. Overall, I thought the album was really good. I will say that I don't think that it's their best album, for sure. I would say maybe it's their second or third best album. Maybe second, I guess. But I think probably Wither, Blister, Burn, Peel is a little bit better. Obviously, I think Darkest Days is their best album. But, it's hard to compare this to that. I just think that it's so impressive that they managed to make an album 21 years later that still sounded like Stabbing Westward. And it goes beyond just Christopher Hall's vocals, which he sounded identical, which I think is fantastic, and I really do like him as a vocalist. I think that his, I'm sure, intentional decision to not have really any backing vocals on the album at all was, like I said, intentional, and I feel like it worked okay, but I feel like some of those things that I was talking about, some of those issues with the vocals during the choruses, could have been totally fixed by having him keep his vocals mostly mixed and edited the same way they were during the verses, and then just adding vocal parts along with and on top of his vocal parts and vocal melodies for the chorus. But he probably seems like the kind of vocalist to me that would want to be able to recreate exactly what he did on the album in a live setting. And I've said this until the cows come home, I'll say it forever, that you should never not do something in a studio because you can't recreate it live. You should always leave every single ounce of your being in the studio. Every single iota of creativity should be left in the studio and every possible avenue should be taken to make your album and your individual songs on the album as good as possible, no matter what that takes, within reason, of course. And, you know, some bands like to just go into the studio, perform their songs, mix them, and it's done. Other bands like to go into the studio and craft an album and craft their songs. And I definitely feel like the songs on this album were crafted, but they were crafted individually, maybe even in isolated situations, away from the other songs, and maybe even done at different times. Like I said, a couple of these songs could have maybe been finished, or mostly finished, a year or two, or even maybe even 3 years ago. And then they were just kind of taken and put on this album, and this is almost more like a compilation of things they've worked on over the last several years, rather than having it be a single cohesive album. Which makes me think that if they stay together as a band, and if this album, which, again, it's September, and I hadn't even heard that this album was out, I didn't even know, but nowadays it's a lot harder to get something out there unless you get specific people and you promote yourself the right way. But I never even heard of that, so like I guess that does say something, because I'm a fan of the band, but hopefully this album is big enough that they can justify staying together, and that they have enough fun and enough time to appreciate everything, that they want to go back in the studio, create a new album. You know, we also can't take into we have to take into consideration the pandemic and possibly how that affected the recording of all this stuff. If they got together and, I'm just assuming that this album was recorded over a long period of time. It's possible they got together like in October of last year, recorded a bunch of stuff, it got mixed, and then the album came out in March. However, I'm pretty sure that this album was recorded over years and put together, especially because of the ways that some of the songs sound very different from the other songs. But, if that is the case, then we're bleeding into the pandemic, a couple years ago, so, and even into last year. So, that might have created a different way for them to work and all these things. So, but hopefully everything comes together for them to enjoy what they're doing, still having fun. They want to go into the studio maybe with these couple other newer guys that are in the band, have them contribute a little bit maybe, and then create a new album. I still feel like they could create a masterpiece. I feel like another masterpiece, because I do think that Darkest Days is a masterpiece album. But I feel like they have it in them maybe. Just in listening to this, I feel like they still have the creativity there for sure. They're willing to take the risks with the different sounds they're using, having a slow song at the end like that. They have 2 7.5-minute long songs on this album, which is great. And in today's musical landscape, where a lot of songs are 2 minutes or less, it's nice to have that, but it is a risk to have 2 7.5-minute long tracks on your album. I love it personally, but that's a risk. So I can appreciate that, and I absolutely love that, and I'm happy that they did that. So the creativity is still there. But I would think if they would get together in the studio with lots of time, hopefully enough money to have everything produced very well. I do think that some of the vocal things and everything could have been done a little bit better, but I think that was maybe more in the mixing side rather than the recording side. I feel like everything was recorded pretty well. But I feel like if they got together with enough of a budget and enough time to craft an album, we could get something truly special in a couple of years. But that's looking ahead. So for now, let's just enjoy Chasing Ghosts and their back catalog. If you haven't listened to it for a while and you've watched this video, go back and check out some of their other stuff. Like I've said a million times now, I can't recommend Darkest Days enough. And I think that their self-titled album is also something that would be interesting to go revisit if you listened to it and maybe dismissed it at first back in the day. All the acoustic guitars, I think, really threw people off, but I think it's special in its own way. And talk about a risk. That album was an incredible risk for them to make an album like that. And I personally feel like it paid off in a really good way. I feel like a lot of bands can get a little bit stale with their sound, and using acoustic guitars instead of electric guitars is a really good way to basically make you rethink, reprioritize the different parts of your band. And it wouldn't work for everything, but it is an interesting thought. Hold on one sec. I'm actually recording a reaction right now.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're in the reaction now.
Oh, sweet. Anyway, we're out junk jotting, and they have a Harry Potter board game that's the Mystery at Hogwarts. Would you be interested in that?
How much is it?
I can go
I can go to from? Yeah, I just want you recently. Harry Potter. Is this one? Hold on, just one second. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, unless it's $2 that one, then they probably not. It's like $3 less, sure. Okay.
Let you know what we got today.
Yeah, Definitely, I definitely want to hear. Yes.
All right, I'll let you get back to it. See you later.
Okay, yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, yeah, I can't remember what I was talking about at all. Oh, I don't know. I think I was kind of ending it. So we'll just go ahead and basically end it there. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. And I'll let you go for now. Stay tuned, like I said, for me discussing all these records that I put on the back wall up here. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you very much. And spread good music around with your people and friends. And I don't even know. See you next time. Okay, so I just have to say, possibly as a second bonus thing, I don't even know. This poor candle's been lit forever. Isn't this thing cool, though? First of all, good on him for staying up the whole time. But I spent an hour and a half trying to get this light working. And let me tell you, it was not easy. It was ridiculous how hard it was for me to get this going. Because it's a smart bulb. That's right. Oh, look how great I look. Nope, not at all. But it was so hard for me to get this thing working. I spent an hour and a half working on it. And I was like, oh, I can put it behind, it's a color one. So I can make it whatever color I want. You can't see on there, I don't think. Well, you can see me changing the colors here, but I thought, oh, I can put it behind me like all these YouTubers do and have a cool, bright pink light or whatever behind me. And no way. But, of course, I've got too much light on me. I've got all this light on me. Hold on, if I get rid of this. Now we'll be really Halloween-y. Look at this. Ooh. Ooh. What if I do this? Oh. Yeah. Wait, it's gotta go down. Where'd it go? Wait, where'd it go? Boop. Boop. Ah, I'm back. Oh. Now I'm over here. So silly. But, yeah, I can do the colors. So I can... Hold on, let me turn the brightness down maybe, and then you can tell a little bit more what's going on. Yeah, that's actually... In real life, it looks really cool. In real life, this looks really cool. Look, Stabbing Westward. Ah. But I can actually take and adjust the color to be like there's red, blue, which it doesn't look blue. It looks purple because of my setting. Whoa, it just switched over to blue there. Interesting looking. Well, blue is so dark. Can I make it brighter? That's bright blue. And then very dark blue. Man, that's really interesting. Turquoise. Bright green. I'm at bright green now, but the camera can't recognize that. Oh, that is weird. See how it just disappears there? My camcorder must not be able to do certain colors. So there's like a teal. We're getting to yellow. So there's like a yellow. Dark red. Total dark red here. There, that's maybe a better representation of the color. Ooh. Ooh. Oh. Hello. Happy Halloween, everybody. I'm pretty much done.
Oh, no, I'm looking for something.
Might be useful. Hello, everybody. This is bonus stuff. I might try to do this without editing the video, see what happens. We'll see, but I was actually in the process of taking my records off the wall behind me because it's going to be October, I think, probably when this video gets posted. And so I was taking some of my records off the wall behind me and trying to put in some records that I found that I think would be cool, a little spooky for October and November maybe. And I really like that cool, like, dark aesthetic and stuff. Plus, the album, obviously, I'm going to be reacting to, if I include this at the end of this video, is Stabbing Westward, which is a pretty dark, gothic-y sort of band. But I had this one up. This is just one of the songs from, well, from Dark Shadows I had this, but I thought it was kind of a cool blue color, and I just thought it was neat, so I had that up there on the wall for a while. And then this is one I've had up there since I put the records on the wall back there, and this is one of the most special records that I own. This is Crossing the Rubicon by a band called The Sounds from Sweden, and if you're unfamiliar with them, I highly recommend looking them up. Really, any of their work. Their first two albums are a little bit more sort of pop-punky sort of aesthetic, a lot more raw. And then after that, they got to be where I feel they're probably their best with Crossing the Rubicon. Something to Die For, I think, is the name of the album. And then The Weekend, I think, is what the name of the album is called. I think. And then their most recent album, Things We Do for Love, I believe is what it's called. Those four albums are fantastic. The Weekend, if that's the name of the album, I'm thinking correctly, that album is a lot more sort of prog rock, electronic prog rock. But I don't know. Just check them out. They're really, really awesome. I can't recommend this album and their album after this, which I think is called Something to Die For, if I remember. Those two albums, this album and that album are fantastic. And I've had this on my wall since I started doing my channel, and I really, really, or at least since I moved over to this side of the room anyway, but I really liked having this one up there, and it was a lighter color, which if it was behind me, you know, you could see the outline of my head around it, which is nice. If I put something dark behind me, my head gets lost. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I've already taken those out and replaced those with this, the Dance Macabre. This is a sort of a classical record, just doing sort of a relatively, I guess, kind of scarier, darker classical piece. It's an interesting record. I've listened to it, I think, maybe once, but I like the visual on this with the skeletons dancing. I think it's cool. The colors of the Dance Macabre, it's kind of neat. There's like a sort of like a bunny thing over here that I see for the first time as I'm holding it up. Yeah. No, it's like a chicken. Or it's a rooster. You know, it probably has to do with the story of this actual song, which I know nothing about, but still, this is going to go on the wall behind me. And then this record, which is really interesting, which I found earlier this year at a garage sale, by Mike Warnke. Never heard of him. This is A Christian Perspective on Halloween. So I have not listened to this. I don't know what's on it. It'd be interesting to listen to maybe one day. Maybe interesting to pull some samples from or something to put in a song. I don't know. That might be cool. But it says Halloween on it. It's an interesting record. I think it'll look good on the wall. It is black, so it's not a light color, but like most of these are dark colors. But next I'm going to be taking the Roger Williams Yellow Bird. This, I just think the record looks awesome. And again, it's a light color, so I could have it behind my head and it would sort of help outline my head. But I really enjoy how this one looked on the wall. I love the colors, the blue, the green, the red, and the yellow, and the white. It's really nice. I love this one. This one will probably go back up maybe next spring or something. But I just thought I would record myself. I was just sitting here doing this, and I thought, oh, well, I guess I can record this and maybe post it as bonus material or something. And then I thought, well, I could just put it at the end of the Stabbing Westward video. I did contemplate actually doing this in the video, but I have done terrible recently about keeping my videos shorter. So in case you're curious, the back of this record looks like this. Not sure what year this is from. Anyway, where did I... Oh, down here. Goodbye to that. And then in this one, we're going to put... this is one of the most surprising records I've ever found. When I started getting into records a little bit a couple years ago, when I got a big cabinet record player that we kept out in our garage, I started looking for records at garage sales and things, and just going through records that I had collected over years when I found good deals on them and things. And I listened to this, and it shocked me. This is such a cool album. If you're unfamiliar, which like I was, Grace Slick was actually one of the singers for Jefferson Airplane. And then after Jefferson Airplane broke up, and Jefferson Starship as well. And I'm not too sure about the history of all those bands, and I don't know those bands at all, really. Except for their few big songs like White Rabbit. But after they broke up or whatever, Grace Slick released a couple solo albums. This album, I listened to this and I thought, this is where Nightwish gets their sound from. This had to have been a huge inspiration for Thomas Holopainen and Nightwish. And any band that is sort of like a symphonic metal or symphonic sort of gothic rock opera type of thing, this has got to be a huge inspiration for that. And so I cannot recommend looking this album up enough. This is the only album of hers that I've heard, and I was really hoping that I could find records of her other albums, or actually CDs maybe. I was really hoping that they had like a compilation of her stuff on CD, like that I could buy like a pack, like an original album classic series of like 4 or 5 of her albums all together in one pack on CD, but I had nothing like that. Apparently it wasn't big enough for any company to do that. But this is the backside, just in case you're curious. But I really, really love the way this looks. I love the way it sounds. It's very dark. It's very sort of gothic-y. It's from the 80s. I should have looked what it was, but I don't want this section to be long here. But I'm really excited to put this up on the wall. This is, when I started listening to records, like I said, what I was trying to do was I wanted to find an album that I did not know what it was, listen to it, and discover like a really good, solid album all the way through from front to back. And I wasn't necessarily looking at any particular genre. I just wanted to find it on vinyl, and I thought that would be something cool to find. Yeah, that looks great. Wow. I love that. That'll be great to have up for a while. And actually that works really nicely with... I think I'm going to actually end up taking this one off as well. But if you look at that, the color is very similar here with my Birthday Massacre, which I'm wearing my Birthday Massacre shirt, by the way, and the Grace Slick, which is really cool. I wonder if Grace Slick was even an inspiration for... the Birthday Massacre. I don't know. Now let's see here. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces on the wall. Oh, I'm going to have to do the Don Quixote one too. Or maybe not. Star Sailor, one of my favorite records that I also own, and one that I've had up since I put the records up there. I just love this album. It actually, last year was the 20th anniversary edition of this album, and I bought the special deluxe edition. And I actually filmed the beginning part of a review for my channel for that album. However, I was disappointed in it overall, and so I just ended up never completing it after I actually listened to it. But this is such a good album. Very different than Stabbing Westward, though. This one has to go in a sleeve to be protected. With the 20th anniversary re-release of this album, they have a new vinyl that's out as well, but this is the original vinyl pressing. So that's a really cool thing that I own. Now, what's going in here? This is an album I found a long time ago that I thought was really cool. I've listened to this. It's really weird. It's like 80s sort of 80s punk, pop punk type of stuff, I guess. Pop punk didn't exist at the time, but it's kind of like it is like pop punk is what I would describe it as. Maybe like a little bit kind of like Billy Idol or something like that. Maybe like with a heavier edge. But this is Dawn of the Dickies by the Dickies, I believe is the name of the band. Yeah, the Dickies. But this is just kind of a cool zombie cover. This is from the 80s, like I said, 1980 as a matter of fact. This is what the back looks like. The back's actually really cool. I could have the back facing out like this. That would actually be really sweet. But I like it when people look at the records in the back of the videos and are like, ooh, what's that? That looks interesting. And so I think a better display would be Dawn of the Dickies. Actually, I'm not quite sure. I better put the front facing out. So that's kind of a cool... It's like a bit of a horror-themed thing. Very fun record, though. Not very dark sounding at all. which is totally cool. Certainly the 80s weren't necessarily about darkness or anything too serious. That was definitely, the 90s were definitely a reflection of the lightheartedness of the 80s. So there's Dawn of the Dickies. And I did have, and I have to make a decision now, I did have this Charlie Brown, Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown record that I wanted to put up. Now I already put up the Ghostly Sounds one. That's a sound effects record with spooky sounds on it. Really cool. And then the Don Quixote one I feel like is pretty. But this is the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. We got to put the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown up there. Oh, this is going to be bad. So graceful. I am. So this record is a Tail Spinners for Children series record. This Tail Spinners for Children series record of records, all children's stories, like not Disney, has nothing to do with Disney, but they have like Cinderella, Pinocchio, Snow White. I think there's like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Maybe there's like a bunch of different fairy tales, classic books, things that were sort of more of children's literature. Don Quixote is one of them, obviously. And all of them have this crazy cover art. Just go online and look up Tail Spinners for Children, and you'll see these crazy... well, actually, I think there's one on the back here. There's some on the back here, though I don't think that it's in color. Let's see what we... Oh yeah, there's some. They're pretty small, and they're not in color. But I'll hold this up, and maybe you can zoom. I can zoom in on them or something, and you can see if their light's nice. But this is. There are some really, really cool pictures on here of different ones. Don Quixote, Alice in Wonderland, Davy Crockett, Macaroni the Little Pony. There's one of Beethoven. Sinbad the Sailor looks awesome. Aladdin looks cool. Treasure Island. Little Red Riding Hood looks cool. Pinocchio one looks neat. Cinderella's kind of neat. Robin Hood. Sleeping Beauty one looks really creepy. Pied Piper, the Nutcracker. You can go online and look these up and see all the pictures. They're really cool. I'm going to look for more of these in the future if I can ever find them. And I love this Don Quixote one. It looks like a crazy metal record or something. I think that's really cool. But since it's going to be Halloween, we've got to throw in It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. We got to have that on the wall, right? And this is one of the, a lot of children's records had like a book that came with it. And this is one of those. So it's the story of the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown along with some songs. And the, gosh, it just looks, the records look so cool when you put them like that in a like a glass frame. It's not glass, it's hard plastic, but. And this record was actually damaged up on the top. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but there's some dirt up here and stuff. But it still looks really great, and it'll look good up on the wall. So I'm going to put these up, and I'm going to record my reaction to Stabbing Westward. So, heck yeah. Oh my gosh.
As I go play for the paddock, use a bagel, so dramatic, I guess. I bite my tongue, it's bad. Come mad, I didn't take step. Thought you were too good for me, my dear. Every day, time to play, my dear. It's okay, 7 4 reasons that I think are sure, yeah.
Listening to Bad Habit by CPC. Give the tracking more new music on Best New on Spotify. You're listening to I Just Want a Lover by No Cyrus. Follow the Fall Feelings with the Fall Feels playlist. Listen on Spotify.